Hey, before this video starts, I just want to let you all know that I actually made a video before this one, but I can't upload it to YouTube. The title is Properly Analyzing Bo Burnham's Inside, his new special, and I really like the video. Unfortunately, it's been copyrighted 19 times in a row, no matter what I've changed or removed. If you want to watch the video, it's in my Discord, and if you're watching this video the day of release, we're actually going to have a watch party for Inside, and then my video on it afterwards. If you're not watching the day of, the video is still on my Discord, feel free to join. Anyways, with that note over, let's begin. Want to hear something weird? Zootopia came out in 2016. 2016, that feels too recent, right? Inside Out came out before Zootopia. Anyways. Zootopia was a pretty landmark film for animation. It's the 10th highest grossing Disney movie of all time, beating out classics like The Incredibles, Finding Nemo, and The Lion King. Endless piles of art were made, from traumatizing to downright uncomfortable. Special shout out to the abortion comic, Jesus Christ. The fan base of this movie has chugged along for years, and shone a spotlight on the furry community due to exposing to the vast public the idea of, well, you know, furries. They even advertised the movie at FurCon before its release, fun fact there. But it's been quite a while since I've taken a look back at this movie. I was 14 when it came out, and I haven't watched it since, so I decided to take another look a few days ago. So, is it still good? It's complicated. From the very first shot of the movie, you can tell just how stunning the animation is. The visuals are by far the best thing in this movie. When it comes to art, from drawings to music to anything else, you can almost tell when people genuinely enjoy what they're working on. And I know with some of the small details in this movie that the animation team was having a field day. And through interviews, we find out just how much work went into getting the animation for the animals right. We went to different facilities in the United States and to Kenya as well. What we're looking for are very specific behaviors, very unique to an animal that's different from what we do. It was interesting actually going there and being present with the animals versus watching videos or documentaries. But when you witness them in person, you see their personality come out and the correlation of, oh, that trait they have, that would work really well for Judy Hopps or Bogo. It was really fun to see how the actors and characters' personalities actually aligned with the animal traits too. There are so many details from these trips that translate perfectly into the movie. One of my favorites is Nick Wilde actually laughing like a fox does. As for the world, the play at the start of the movie explains the world of Zootopia pretty well. The world of Zootopia used to be like actual nature, savage animals surviving through the circle of life, hunting and gathering respectively. But in this world, all animals began to naturally evolve more intelligence until they could found a society. The first ever settlement became what we now know as Zootopia. But wait, are you telling me this Utopia is not perfect? I'm not sure if there was a more abused concept than Utopia with a dark underbelly. The Giver, Legend of Korra, Guardians of Ga'Hoole, BNA, Toy Story 3, WALL-E, Coraline, The Truman Show, The Matrix, The Purge, BioShock, Mother 3, We Happy Few, Shin Megami Tensei, Animal Farm, Death Note, The Good Place, Pinocchio, Wreck-It Ralph, Charlie and the Goddamn Chocolate Factory. The False Utopia has been used so many fucking times that if you're going to use it, you better make it unique. And Zootopia just doesn't. In fact, it is possibly the most generic utopia I've ever seen. Generic is also a good word for basically all the writing in this movie. Nick is the generic cynical witty character. Judy is the generic naive optimist. The witty guy tries to crush the optimist's spirits, but the optimist springs back and outsmarts the witty guy. The optimist starts to give the cynic a new outlook on life, etc., etc. However, there is a very important part of this movie that both you and I need to keep in mind. It's for children. I'm a 19-year-old trying to analyze a kid's movie. This isn't Beastars, an anime for teenagers and furries. It's a movie for kids and future furries. For those who don't remember the start of the movie too well, Judy Hopps is from a small town called Bunnyboro. She's always wanted to be a cop, and despite everyone trying to shut her down, she eventually travels out to Zootopia in order to make her dreams come true. However, being the only herbivore in the police force, she's given chore work and pushed off to the side. Eventually, in order to try and prove her worth to Bogo, the police chief, she's given 48 hours to solve a missing animals case. She was scammed the day earlier by Nick Wilde, lifelong fox and con man, who seems to have a connection to the missing otter. After tricking him into incriminating himself, Judy forces Nick to help her solve the case. Something I didn't expect when returning to this movie is that it's surprisingly funny in the strangest of ways. Sometimes you have these completely out of touch scenes like Judy's first encounter with Gideon Gray, this really off exchange of dialogue that's just inconsistent and hard to sit through, and then sometimes you get hit with the DMV scene. I do not know how, but 39 minutes into this movie, you are smacked with the most unexpected scenario for a kids movie. Judy has no access to the police's database, so they need to find another way to run a plate. With no other options, Judy and Nick go to the DMV, where every worker is a sloth. Real relatable for children, but they pull it off really well. They keep the humor relatable for adults while relying on simple jokes to make it funny for children too. This is genuinely the best executed scene in the movie. In fact, this scene is sandwiched between the other two best scenes in the movie. This 13-minute stretch, from the nudist colony to the Godfather ripoff, are the greatest 13 minutes in the entire film. Every scene is tailored towards adult topics but written for all ages, and it completely pays off. I still don't know how they could even put the words nudist colony into the movie and not at least get hit with a PG-13. That's not even mentioning Gazelle, who, again, in a kids movie is wearing nothing but a bra and a skirt with a bunch of shirtless buff lions dancing around her. Are we sure Beastars is the sexual one? Anyways, after little rat Godfather gives Judy and Nick the scoop on Mr. Otter Guy, I forget all the names, the pair head to the jungle to talk to the driver injured in the incident. Apparently, Mr. Otter wasn't kidnapped, he suddenly went crazy. He attacked the driver, then fled from the car, never to be seen since. Right after telling Judy and Nick all of this, the panther goes savage, starting a well-executed action scene. This is what I wish a lot more of the movie was, utilizing this beautiful city to its fullest potential. Only a few scenes really use any of the unique areas outside of the metropolis center. Running on logs, swinging on vines 1,000 feet up. This is what I came for. They don't even use the desert you see in the overhead shots at all, and we see the tundra like, what, 3 times? These are the coolest environments in the movie, and instead we get, a bunch of buildings. It's disappointing. After Nick and Judy barely survive the attack and the panther magically goes missing, Nick's character goes from defensive and wisecracking to wishy-washy pushover over the course of 30 seconds. After spending half the movie actively trying to sabotage Judy's investigation, being saved once suddenly cracks the shell he's been building his entire life. This is not how someone abused and rejected their entire life reacts. It annoys me a little bit how they make it just a flick of a switch. Nick's flashback, too, is pretty painful to watch. Equality is definitely not the worst message you can try to push in a movie, but 99% of bigotry is not so in your face. They don't just beat the shit out of him or reject him for joining in the first place. These 7-year-old demons saved up all their allowance over the course of presumably months to buy a fucking muzzle to pull this shit. And I know that worse events have happened in real life, but this world is a modern metropolis setting, not the 1920s. Teaching kids to look out for cartoonishly evil people makes them miss the ones that can really do damage. They could have done so much better, but instead they pulled an animated Jussie Smollett. But despite that small hiccup, the middle of the movie is really where Zootopia shines most. The action is pretty fun, the jokes are pretty funny, and the scenes are pretty memorable. With some help of the obvious twist villain of the movie, Judy and Nick find themselves at a secret facility hidden at the edge of the jungle biome. After a fun little stealth scene, we finally come upon all the missing carnivores in the city, and we find out the person who locked them here is Mayor Lionheart. Look, it was obvious even at this point that he wasn't the real bad guy, but they don't even try to make him look bad here. A bunch of citizens start going haywire and attacking anyone in sight. What the fuck are you supposed to do? Throw them in public prisons and report it to the press that citizens are going insane at random? Let's just cause a mass panic, that'd be fun. Even if it's self-serving to his own re-election, quarantining these people and keeping them secluded and safe until a cure is found is objectively the right decision in this scenario. It's even proven by how the media reacts in the movie once it's announced to the public just a few scenes later. This also so happens to be the worst scene in this movie by far. I was still angry while writing the script, I mean, Jesus. So Judy gets widespread recognition for finding all 15 missing predators in one fell swoop, and because of that is due for a speech about the entire case. And Judy Hopps, the unending optimist, champion of equality, partner of Nick Wilde for the past 48 hours of saving each other over and over, stands there on that fucking podium and says that the reason predators are going savage, something that hasn't happened for thousands of years, mind you, is not some new development, not a disease, not stress-related, not a new drug on the market. Her assumption is that predators are predisposed to be savage. Are you fucking kidding me? Judy Hopps, ladies and gentlemen. Then she has the gall to come down from the podium and talk to Nick like she doesn't know what she just said. Even as an idiot 14-year-old, I recognized how god-awful that scene was. I mean, Jesus Christ. Nick's reaction was fairly reasonable, I guess, and honestly, the reaction from society was pretty reasonable too. When the most famous and beloved person in the city spews that garbage to an already tense and combative society, the fact that there wasn't full-blown riots is honestly a little surprising to me. And after causing all of this unrest, the little demon rabbit quits, as she should, and returns back to her backwards yokel carrot farming life. But then something almost as dumb is revealed. Presumably a few days or weeks after she moves back home, her now reformed and strangely articulate former bully cracks the case.
Hey kids, don't you run through that Mindy Camp from Holly Cynthias.
Well, now there's a $4 word, Mr. H. My family always just called them night howlers.
So they've lived around these people for their entire lives, and the term night howlers never came up once. Even worse, the story of how their mother got a fucking divot in her arm was never brought up by her parents who never shut up, and somehow this is the third dumbest thing to happen so far. Luckily for Judy, Nick is a lot more forgiving than I am for putting an entire metropolis on the verge of anarchy and raising racial tensions for the next decade. After the plot has fallen apart for a good 10 minutes, the final stretch of the movie manages to pick up a few of the pieces. After interrogating the weasel carrying the bag of night howlers from earlier, Nick and Judy find themselves the lab where the night howlers are synthesized. And once again, we're brought a very solid action scene. Generally, I don't expect to see a moving drug-filled train cart in a kids movie, but again, they toe the line extremely well. Everything is just cartoonish enough to be entertaining for kids, while keeping more than a few details to explain the full picture to adults. Once the train starts moving, I'm immediately into it. It's a fun concept done well, except for a little thing called quipitis. It's a problem that infects a lot of quote-unquote witty characters in action movies. Hey, is your life in danger? Just be sure to crack 800 jokes while you're in a fucking samba dance with the Grim Reaper.
I may have to rescind that victory toot-toot. Maybe that's just hail.
And it's not like the jokes are ever funny. All they accomplish is breaking the tension of a good action scene, and it's exactly what happens here. After barely escaping with their lives, almost all the evidence down and about 10 jokes up, we move into the climax of the film. While most of the evidence is burned in the wreck, Nick manages to grab the case with the night howler gun. And then, oh no, what's this? The obvious twist villain is acting suspicious? Oh, it couldn't be. Lamb Lady, believe it or not, was the real villain the whole time, orchestrating the entire Night Howler plot to destabilize trust in predators. But the message with this entire twist is strange. In Beastars, again a weirdly similar show, predators hold political power because of the strength they hold over prey. They're seen as strong and intimidating, so they outbully or threaten political opponents to remain in power. In Zootopia, it seems to be the same way, with Lionheart being this dickish brute that mocks and belittles Lamb Lady constantly and only cares about his position as mayor. But then they just replaced Lionheart with Beldolf Hitler. What kind of message about equality is this trying to send? Everyone sucks? Is that what you want kids walking away with? I just don't get it. Judy and Nick get thrown into a museum enclosure, and Nick is shot with what seems to be a night howler dart. And after Lamb Lady completes her long villain speech,
Bye-bye, bunny. Blood, 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 and death.
All right, you know what, you're milking it.
I framed Lionheart. I can frame you too. It's my word against yours. Ooh, actually...
And I'll dart every predator in Zootopia to keep it that way.
It's your word against yours. It's called a hustle, sweetheart.
it was pretty good. I liked it at least. Bellwether is arrested, the predators are cured, and the Zootopia PD gets a new cop. So what changed between the beginning and end of this movie? The animals were found, Nick and Judy are cop partners, an illicit drug was made public that'll plague the city for years to come, racial tension will sharply divide citizens for decades, and prey won't be trusted with political power for even longer than that. But hey, look at the bright side. The song at the end is pretty good.
Hey, Judy, I'd just like to say I'm sorry for the way I behaved in my youth. I had a lot of self-doubt, and it manifested itself in the form of unchecked rage and aggression.